Israel's pounding of the Gaza Strip is continuing for a sixth day. Air and artillery strikes have struck at the heart of the enclave, reducing buildings and whole neighborhoods to rubble. At least 1,100 Palestinians have been killed in the bombardment. Concerns are growing about the humanitarian situation as Gaza remains under a complete blockade. The only power station there has run out of fuel. Israel's military says 1,200 people are now known to have died in last weekend's attacks by Hamas. Arise News chief correspondent John Cookson reports from the Israeli city of Ashkelon, close to the border with Gaza, where a fresh barrage of rockets fired by Hamas damaged a hospital.
The Israeli army has released footage of it destroying what's left of Hamas's navy. An element of Saturday's surprise assault by Hamas included the Palestinian militants attacking Israeli-held territory by sea. Now that threat has been neutralized. Overnight, Israeli bombing has killed at least 30 Palestinians. There's discussions between the US and Israeli officials about organizing safe passage out of Gaza for civilians. Already 200,000 Palestinians in the enclave have lost their homes and are sheltering in schools and UN facilities. Where they'll eventually escape to right now is anyone's guess. Saturday's Hamas assault and kidnapping of Israelis stunned the world, and the Israelis have released rare footage of Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking to President Biden about it.
Joe, I want to give you a clear picture of the difficult situation we face. We were struck Saturday by an attack whose savagery I can say we have not seen since the Holocaust. I mean, we had hundreds massacred, families wiped out in their beds and their homes, women brutally raped and murdered, over 100 kidnapped, including children.
The first of America's extra military aid has arrived in Israel, the US president affirming rock-solid support.
I just got off the phone with a third call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I told him the United States experience what Israel is experiencing, our response would be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. We also discussed how democracies like Israel and the United States are stronger and more secure when we act according to the rule of law. Terrorists purposely target civilians, kill them. We uphold the laws of war, the law of war. It matters, there's a difference.
The Israeli Defense Force has rebuilt the barrier around Gaza. It's also sent infantry, armored soldiers, artillery corps, plus 300,000 reservists close to the Gaza border. Here in the Israeli city of Ashkelon, which is about 10 to 15 kilometers from Gaza, streets are bristling with tensions. I can hear Israeli warplanes in the skies, and my hotel here took a direct hit from a Hamas rocket yesterday. We've just had another warning, and we've been told to go inside and take shelter. After the sirens go, you only get 1 minute or 2 minutes to get to safety. A woman yelps in fear as the rockets fall outside. John Cookson, Arise News, Ashkelon, southern Israel.
For more on the conflict in the Middle East, we now join Arise chief correspondent John Cookson in Tel Aviv, Israel. Good morning, John, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
All right, John, just seeing your report, and it's heartbreaking to see what's going on there in Israel and, of course, in Gaza as well. We hear that Israel have said that they will continue to withhold fuel, food, and supplies to Gaza until about 1,000 hostages taken in are released. Gaza saying that, and Red Cross is reporting on the humanitarian side that hospitals in Gaza could soon become morgues. It's a dire situation. Do you think Hamas would in any way release the hostages? Would Israel relent in terms of its attack on Gaza until that happens?
No, they're not going to release hostages because they're a human shield, are they not, for any attack which is imminent. Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, I should tell you, has just arrived in Israel a short time ago on a two-day visit to the region. He'll meet with the new war cabinet headed by Netanyahu Mr. Gallant, the defense minister, and Benny Gantz, the former defense minister and head of the armed forces, and hundreds of thousands of Israeli troops are massing near Gaza for this expected assault. I spent yesterday in Ashkelon, as you saw from my report, and experienced something that the Israeli people have been suffering for weeks now, and the threat from the sky is it's hard to describe, really. You just get very little warning of incoming rockets from Hamas. You just have a very short time to get to shelters. And some people, of course, don't. Rockets in Ashkelon hit a hospital yesterday, and 3 women were injured. Overnight, Hamas fired rockets hit towards Tel Aviv, where I am at the moment, and there's currently another warning of more waves of rockets heading to the city, although we haven't been told to go to shelters. So from this side of the fence, as it were, difficult days, of course, but in Gaza, horrendous conditions in Gaza City and Khan Yunis and all the other outlying areas in the Gaza Strip, home to some 2.3 million people. The blockade and the cutting off of power and fuel and food has, as you say, deeply impacted on the people of Gaza, and the hospitals just can't cope. They're absolutely overwhelmed with patients, and some are dying before they can be treated. And the big question is what's going to happen to the people once the major attack by Israel gets underway. Where are they going to go? And negotiations are underway with Egypt at the moment to asked them to open the crossing into Egypt, but the Egyptians reluctant at the moment to do that, although they are promising to try to get aid in and food and fuel to the Palestinian people. So an absolutely desperate situation, and the question of humanity and all of that raised. But the rest of the world, or at least the Western world, saying to Israel that it has a right to defend itself, although it asks Israel to observe the rules of war.
Well, John, I don't envy you at all. From Tel Aviv to Ashkelon, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying, look, anybody near Hamas territory will be a dead man. But Ashkelon, I guess, is in Israel. But just keep safe. But I would like you to talk about the coalition war government, war cabinet that Prime Minister Netanyahu announced yesterday, with Benny Gantz and Gallant now being part of the government, and Israel coming together and saying it's wartime and we have to be together. What is the significance of that war cabinet that emerged?
It's significant. It's significant because this is a cabinet that is going to lead this nation, Israel, into a major conflict with the Palestinian faction, Hamas. And there has been criticism that Netanyahu has been very slow to assemble his war cabinet. It took 5 days. Now, in the past, they've come together in a national unity government quicker than that in previous crises. But the background to all of this, of course, is the fact that Netanyahu led a slim coalition. There was a huge rift in the coalition itself and the opposition parties. So it took some negotiating, some hard bargaining to assemble this coalition together. Mr. Gantz, left of centre, and a popular figure, of course, with many here in Israel, but completely opposed to the right-wing views of Netanyahu. So getting those two together was a major feat, not least because apparently Mrs. Netanyahu doesn't like Mr. Gantz at all, mainly because of his criticism of her husband, saying he's a criminal and should be in jail. And indeed, Netanyahu is still facing corruption charges, which, of course, are set aside during this present crisis. But this coalition has been formed now, and it includes Mr. Gantz representing the left of centre here, and it's onwards and upwards to fight this forthcoming battle, which is expected very, very soon indeed.
Okay. Good to see you again. I trust you're keeping safe in Tel Aviv. Ofer Kassif is a member of the Knesset. And he said pointedly that this attack by Palestinians is as a result of the very nefarious policies of Bibi Netanyahu against the Palestinians. And he had been a lone voice talking about this as a Knesset. One, I would like to know, what the feel of the Knesset is about all of this conflict. And are there other voices like speaking, like Osif is speaking from the Knesset? Because this new agreement of a coalition war government, is it going that way with the Knesset, or is just Bibi Netanyahu playing his politics? Because prior to this time, Bibi Netanyahu was not accepted by the Israeli people. When you look at what happened as regards the demonstration against the judges, him trying to take the right against the power of the judges.
Yeah. That's a good question, and the reality is that this country is in crisis at the moment, and as always at these times, Israel tends to come together to throw its support behind whatever leadership is in power, and I think that's the general feeling. Individual Knesset members will have different views, but overall, politically, it wouldn't be right for them to speak out about what is going to happen, because the mood of the country, almost to a man and a woman, is that what is about to happen is the right thing to do. And I've been speaking to Israelis this morning, and they say, yes, we know bad thing is about to happen, but when that's over, things are going to be okay. When Hamas has been destroyed,
yesterday,
then...
Okay, sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
What I didn't say in reply to the Israelis I've spoken to this morning is that I believe that Hamas or something similar will never be destroyed. Hamas has its roots way back, decades ago, in the shadowy Muslim Brotherhood movement of the late 1940s and early 50s. And there's always been a radical Islamic element in this part of the world. So Hamas, which is an acronym of the letters of Islamic resistance and also means courage and bravery in Arabic, it will be around in a different guise. And the tanks and the ground troops go into Gaza, they'll simply slip into civilian clothes and disappear across the border, maybe into Egypt, maybe into Lebanon through secret tunnels, and regroup somewhere, maybe a year, maybe more than that from now. Hamas will never be destroyed, is my belief. It will come back in some other form. And that's the tragedy of this situation.
Okay, yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu declared the area, around the border, a no-go zone for civilians. Nobody should go there. Thousands of troops, Israeli troops, are at the border. By early next week, Israel is considering ground invasion. And yesterday also, Prime Minister Netanyahu told us that every Hamas man is a dead man. Is that allowed under international law? And why is the world silent?
Well, you could argue that Biden wasn't silent. He said the rules of war have to be observed. Now, what are the rules of war? You can't use exploding bullets. You can't use poison gas. You can't use biological weapons. You can't use chemical weapons. You have to consider the military necessity of what you're doing. Your response has to be proportional, and that is highly arguable in this case. And you have to have regard for humanity. You must not cause any unnecessary suffering, and you must not target civilians. Now, when you're attacking an urban area, I would say, how on earth can you observe those rules of war? The Israelis will for sure say they're not targeting civilians, but you can't take out apartment blocks and other buildings, hit refugee camps on the premise that you're destroying military targets, because that's where Hamas stores their military gear. The so-called collateral damage, what a horrible expression, has to be the civilians. So you can say, yes, you have to observe the rules of war. The Israelis will say they are observing the rules of war. But the reality on the ground is just totally different. And sadly, thousands of civilians are going to die in the coming days, unfortunately, and some Israelis too, because Hamas will hit back with volleys of rockets onto cities like Ashkelon, where I was yesterday, and indeed perhaps here in Tel Aviv.
Well, thank you very much, John. And it's we do hope that you keep safe out there. We look forward to getting more reports from you on the ground.